Hello, my name is Brendan Schultz, and today I'm here at the World Forum for Democracy. It's November 9th. I am the U.S. delegate, and joining me today are two of my fellow delegates. If you could please introduce yourselves.
I'm Tomás Huarna. I'm from Buenos Aires, Argentina, and I'm also part of the youth delegation.
I'm Marilyn Pimentel, and I'm also part of the youth delegation, and I'm from the Dominican Republic.
Okay, now this panel here today is going to be majority on the U.S. elections, which of course were yesterday, and the results trickled in this morning, and we actually saw the acceptance speech for Mr. Donald Trump this morning in the European Youth Center, and I think it took us back a little bit. When I woke up at 3 o'clock, I slept from 9 last night, European time, French time, to 3 o'clock in the morning, got up at 3 o'clock, and when I went to bed at 9, we thought it would be about 70-30 with 70 favoring Hillary. When I got up, it was 50-50, and as the night slowly trickled on, we saw a rapid change. So what were your initial feelings? Because that struck me back a little bit. I've talked about this throughout the week. I'm not a supporter of polling really that much. The polls in the U.S. aren't scientific, but no one predicted many of the things we saw yesterday. How many states voted. So, what were your impressions?
Well, I had been following the news coverage in the mainstream media, right? The New York Times and the Washington Post, and they were predicting Hillary would win with an 85%, more or less 85% chance of winning. So, as you said before, you don't believe in polls, but I think we still have some certain faith that, we are getting good coverage of, and we're getting a good temperature of the election. But the truth is, you're right. Polls couldn't tell anything, and I think this talks about how we are being enabled to measure the political climate, and how many of the conclusions the media draws don't really correlate with it, don't really relate to what the people will feel and what they're gonna vote for. And so I think that political elites are also failing to understand what people think and how they're gonna vote and what the values are maybe.
So, impressions. First impression, the media coverage, we made the differentiation this morning between what we were seeing in the AP site and what was being covered. American journalists were like, we'll still have a slightly, hopefully, that maybe Clinton could win when we already know the results. So, why is it even the media supported her? What happened that actually all the way turned around? Yesterday I was talking about the fact that swing state might not all vote Trump, but they did. That's what the thing is. And Florida, as North Carolina, as well as Ohio, they all voted Trump. And we have this old red card going on, and I was getting shocked because I really went into the media and to the mass coverage movement in that Clinton will be the elected candidate, but it didn't. And most surprisingly, I was like, thank you both do. So.
Yeah, just a comment for our viewers joining us online. What happened in the European Youth Center this morning? We were watching the Associated Press numbers coming in, which are as close as you get to about the official tabulations. And then we also had at one point we were watching the Young Turks, BBC, and one point we put on MSNBC. And even after, the Associated Press called Pennsylvania for Donald Trump, and even after Wisconsin and Michigan were very much before the AP called it. They were still going after all the possible ways that we could have a Hillary presidency, but that just wasn't to be. They were manipulating the numbers all over the place, and that's just a microcosm of what I think the U.S. news networks have done this entire time, this entire election.
And even when he was speaking out, when Clinton conceded the election, he was talking about, we didn't see the numbers that we were seeing in the Associated Press. So even when things are already done, even the media didn't actually show the truth behind all of this electional process.
Yeah, even with the concession, that was I'm a fairly young person. I'm only 19 years old, and we're all young. But that's the weirdest concession I've ever seen in my lifetime. We had the Clinton, I think, campaign manager come out at one point and say, this is too close to call, when it obviously wasn't. And then he sent all his supporters home, but it was too close to call. And then 5 minutes later, Clinton calls Donald Trump and concedes the election. It was a very confusing morning. There were a lot of changes happening very quickly. Yeah. But overall, what do you think about the atmosphere here at the forum today after the election? So of course, you can point at this and you can call it a failing of democracy. You can point at this and call it a failing of democracy and say, I know we talked about this yesterday, we disagree on it. You can talk about a failing of democratic values, of tolerance and acceptance and equality. You can say that those values were not put forward in the U.S. elections, in the results. But how do you think people interpreted that here? Do you think that we're seeing a lot of pessimism today or a lot of optimism? This is an opportunity for growth. How do you guys, how are people acting with you?
So I would like to clarify one point. I think that you can actually hold arguments, political arguments, to a certain common measure. Maybe this contradicts something I said maybe last time we talked, but I think that this is the first time one side sees each other not only as like differing political opinions, but as undemocratic. Like one side could argue like Donald Trump's policies are undemocratic. When this hasn't happened before in the United States, at least, maybe you would say, well, I don't agree with these policies, I would do another thing. But there hasn't been a clash of discourses as intense as this time. So still, I wouldn't say that the process wasn't democratic. What you could say is that values of equality and freedom can be compromised with Donald Trump's ideology. But still, I would say that we are in a crisis of democracy, or democracy has failed. We can only say that when the foundations of our democracy, our liberal democracies, Republican democracies, that actually prevent our values of equality and freedom being compromised are actually compromised. Because I mean, we have had a relatively good election with no major problems. I know there have been problems in polling and some machines.
I mean, look at North Carolina, where they enacted the most stringent, anti-voter rights measures. And that state was thought to be a battleground state. It went straight for Donald Trump.
Well,
I mean,
would you say that the United States is not a liberal democracy, and elections are not free? And
yeah, I would say that. The United States is not a liberal democracy. I mean, look at if the funding. Look at the funding. We're allowed to pour as much money as we want to in elections. It's proven that in the congressional races, typically, the vast majority of the time, the congressional race that has majority of the money wins. I mean, as you get to Senate races and presidential races, I would not call the United States a liberal democracy. I would not call the United States a liberal democracy when you have to have a special ID to vote, when governors and mayors take away precincts in minority areas. That does not protect the rights of minorities. That is not a liberal democracy. So I think, we haven't really analyzed that as much yet. We haven't analyzed voter turnout. We haven't analyzed voter suppression as much for this election. We haven't had enough time to. But I think over the next few weeks, once we start to analyze this, we will see that certain individuals, based off of their background, were given more opportunities to vote than others, and that violates the premise of a liberal democracy.
The thing is that, like I said, the editor of Open Democracy, the gap between elites and the mass are getting grower. Capitalism, wild capitalism, is under the democratic system. Hitler, and haven't we learned a lot about the World War II? This is the exact same way. He was elected democratically. There is some kind of...
Just want to clarify, he didn't get a majority, but he got the largest percent. I think it was 47% in the election that he won.
But it's under the democratic system. That's what I want to talk. And this may be failing. It's maybe something that we haven't been able to acquire that has led us to all of this democratic system under that referendum and Brexit and all the things that we've been talking about these few years. And I would like to talk about these outcomes of these elections. Like on January, is the wall are going to be true? This is a historical day because November in 1989 was the Berlin Wall fall. And are we creating another wall? Is my question. Talking with
this entire campaign was based off of I want to build a wall.
Yeah, and I'm talking for the Latin population in the US.
I wouldn't be too fast to compare Trump to Hitler with that freedom, with that liberalism.
I don't think she was comparing the two. I think she was just mentioning that there are failings of democracy.
In democracy system.
People who take democratic rule with very authoritarian
the thing about Hitler and in Germany was that the institutions weren't strong enough to prevent Hitler from gaining that much power. Hitler could implement his measures when he was a democratically elected leader.
He was democratically elected and he abused his power.
Well, he didn't implement his measures when he was a democratically elected leader.
Yeah.
You're seeing it the other way around because people, when he elected, he didn't know he was becoming that dictatorship. But he raises all of this nationalism, all this populism. It's like I'm seeing all these political situations going on here.
Well, but as long as those feelings are contained by institutions, they can actually contain those feelings and restrict them and impose limitations. And these institutions, we've worked on them for hundreds of years. So we can believe they're strong enough. When we see those institutions compromised, then we can say our democracies are in danger.
Definitely.
So it's definitely a failing of the system.
I wouldn't say so yet.
Well, let's just look for a second. Let's look at the other races in the United States, or let's look at the ballot measures that passed in states that voted for Trump. Florida, a state that overwhelmingly voted for Trump, very conservative, has a Republican governor, just voted to legalize medical marijuana. A very liberal thing to do. a very liberal thing to do. So is it really that Americans aren't supporting liberal party policies, or was it a problem with the liberal candidate, the so-called liberal candidate? Was Hillary Clinton not an actual liberal? So a lot of people, the people who just want the system, who think the system's ridiculous, so they vote for the person who's going to bring the system down, vote for Donald Trump. A lot of people who would have voted for, say, Bernie Sanders.
Well, the New York Times conducted an exit poll, and they asked candidates. They asked people to choose phrases that wouldn't describe candidates, and Hillary Clinton was actually not chosen as not very conservative. Like, people said that the phrase "too conservative" would not apply to her. So I wouldn't say people in Florida believe Hillary Clinton is too conservative.
Well, I'm not saying that. I'm saying there's a mismatch between, in America we have two primary political parties.
Yeah.
We have the Conservative Party and the Liberal Party. And then we take Florida. We have a state, this case study here, where we have a state that voted overwhelmingly for Donald Trump, the Conservative Party candidate. And then we have them voting on ballot measures, on individual ballot measures in a very liberal way.
I understand, but I think that we are seeing the ideology of people voting as the same way as the two-party system. I feel this is an obvious disconnect in that sense, and I feel we're analyzing the people's choices with the same categories we see the political elite.
Yeah.
That's the problem, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
I think that has to really boil down to, the Republican Party, an elitist, corporatist party, was running a populist candidate who upset the foundations of the Republican Party, and the Democratic Party, which is supposed to be the populist party, was running a corporatist candidate. This was a really odd year, a really strange mix-up in things, and it continues to get weirder and weirder. As the day goes on, again, I haven't paid attention to the news since Donald Trump's acceptance speech, but just the whole acceptance routine with Hillary not conceding was weird. The election yesterday with voter suppression seems to be weird. And I would really like to look at, once we start to analyze the results of voter turnout, I would really like to see if people either didn't turn out, because America is if you look at America, if you look at the demographics, we are a non-majority white country. We are a non-majority anything country. There's no majority ethnicity. Okay, if you include Arab people as not white in the census data, just like we do with Hispanics in the United States, you say white, non-Hispanic. If you have a separate box for Arabs, and then if you include undocumented immigrants as well in the census tabulations, we are a non-majority white country. So other people from marginalized groups, from minority groups in the United States, needed to vote for Donald Trump. If only, people are saying, oh, this is the white man's vote. If only the white man voted for Donald Trump, he would have gotten around 23% of the vote. So we really need to look at what other groups were voting for him, and who normally vote for a liberal candidate, and why they felt this way. Mitt Romney had 0% of the black vote in 2012. I want to see what percentage of the African American vote Donald Trump had.
And what about the forecast? What are we gonna see in these few months coming? Is Trump seriously accomplishing this? Because we're all fear about that, and I think that minorities are not gonna be respected, because, as he said in his speech, he only talked about us. And
yeah,
then
there was kind of divide. There's an us.
There's an us between the others. Versus the others. So what does it mean? Does it mean that he only is gonna be since he have the Senate right now, and he have the House of Representatives? He has all the powers he wants in order to establish his own policies. The question is he truly going for it, or maybe we could give him a chance of as a pretenses of a doubt?
His speech was very socialist. He said, we're going to build roads, we're going to build bridges, hospitals, we're going to repair the inner cities. That sounds like something that could come out of Bernie Sanders' mouth.
Exactly.
we're going to rebuild this country. Not Donald Trump. I was expecting, that was a change. It was very short, very abridged. I don't know if he was too tired, so if he kind of got away from his usual dogma. But it's just been a really weird 24 hours and a really weird 24 months.
The idea of an us and a them is very common. It's a very commonplace in populist rhetorics. And then a sudden shift in rhetoric, like now he's talking about bridges and infrastructure, is not very rare when you have a populist candidate. Mm-hmm. Still, I don't believe it's going to go as far as he said he would be going. As you know, you have strong institutions in the United States that prevent measures like that from going through.
Let's look at that for a second. We, of course, have strong institutions. We have separations of powers in America, 3 branches of government. Donald Trump's going to be president. the Republicans are holding a majority in the House and the Senate. And on day one, the Republicans are going to, put a really conservative, reactionary person on the Supreme Court, and they're going to control the Supreme Court for the first time in the last few decades, maybe in American history. Sorry, there's going to be a strong conservative, reactionary control over all branches of government. So, they're going to do away with Obamacare on day one. Obama's legacy is going to be trashed. There is not going to be an Obama legacy.
That's the problem when democracy actually fails. This whole government of 8 years who have been trying to get out of the gun policy, who tried to get the Obamacare, who tried to measure social, and because the Congress blocked it, then we're going to start all by zero with the Republicans in the power. Everything's right now.
Okay, again, I disagree. I agree with Obamacare. I disagree with those who say Obamacare is bad. I wouldn't say that those who say that Obamacare is bad are being undemocratic. There's a difference in undemocratic opinions and opinions that disagree with.
I'm not saying that view is necessarily undemocratic. I'm saying that the view that rejects equality of all people in respect to human dignity is undemocratic. Now, I'm just talking about policies which are part of Obama's legacy, as the media calls it, which are going to be trashed.
Okay, again, I would say if we're talking about things that address specifically equality and freedom, I wouldn't say the Republican elite is going to let those measures go through and compromise institutions and change institutions the way that they don't promote equality and freedom.
Yeah, but we need to understand the president's not part of the Republican elite. The president's a populist.
Yeah, that's why.
Yeah, and I really think we need one thing that I was ranting about this morning to a large degree is the Democratic Party and how they played in. They basically handed this to Trump on a silver platter. They said, we had Bernie Sanders, this out-of-a-box candidate, huge support. Everyone who heard Bernie's message, almost everyone were on his side as far as the Democrats go. Said they tried to limit his message through debates. I'm sorry.
No. It's just like making an adjustment. Even Wall Street, people actually were for Bernie Sanders. Yeah. I don't know if you guys saw the interview that was being going on in the internet, but everyone was actually for him.
Yeah,
well, that was one case of one person saying one thing.
Okay, but those are the people in power.
His ideas were very simple and very agreeable. And what did they do? What did the Democratic elite do? The Democratic establishment? They said, no, we're not ready for this. Not that we're not ready, but our big donors won't accept this. And they said, Hillary Clinton, we're going to limit debates. We're going to try and sway the primaries. And look, everyone was backing Hillary. Everyone was backing Hillary. The actors, the political comedians, even Republicans moved over to the Hillary camp. Everyone was backing her. We gave the Democratic candidate as much momentum as we could, and she could not defeat an openly bigoted, hateful person. We gave her all the resources, and she still could not defeat. This isn't even like a close race. This was an electoral blowout. This was an electoral blow. There was no poll that showed Minnesota going to Trump. No poll. And look, he ended up 4 or 5 points ahead at the end of the day.
I like Bernie very much. I actually like him better than Hillary. Still, I think we are being a bit counterfactual here. Maybe if Bernie had won and then lost against Trump, we would be saying that maybe we should have gone for a more conservative candidate, so he would go better against Trump. So, we are just making opinions out of common sense. We don't really know what would have happened.
I'm just saying the Democrats need to become the actual liberal party instead of the corporatist party. Well, thank you two very much for joining me today, and thank you all of you watching us online. I would just like to say in a closing final comment, we need to accept the reality of the situation that we have on our hands now. But while we are accepting that reality, we need to be extremely optimistic. Optimism and hope is the only way forward. I'm not talking about optimism and just laying down thinking, oh, it's going to be all right. We need to really step it up now and start taking actions as Americans and as people around the world, as global citizens, because we can solve these problems. These problems, which we're going to have over the next few years, are tremendous, but the voice of the people will be heard. In democracy, although it showed today, it's not the best. It needs to be worked with. Democracy is the only option. Democracy is our only hope. So we all need to come together as a community to overcome these problems. It's the only way that we're going to get past these challenges. But again, thank you very much for joining us today. I'm Brendan Schultz, coming to you from Strasbourg, France at the World Forum for Democracy. Have a good day.